Sometimes you watch a video that is so horrible that you have to dedicate an entire response video just to point out all the lies in it. One such video is a video by Al Jazeera titled "South Africa is still under apartheid." In that video they explain how black people in South Africa are still being oppressed by white people. Now luckily we have a country like Qatar to show us just how to treat black people, otherwise we wouldn't have known. But in all seriousness, in a country with some of the worst race-based laws, which is against white people, and in which white farmers are being slaughtered like abattoir stock, it is not fun for a company like Al Jazeera to feel racial tensions with a video like this one spreading their lies. When this video was made, the video by Al Jazeera had just over 50,000 views and 1,000 likes. Let's see if we can get this response video to have more views and likes than their video. So please be sure to share this video with your friends on all your social media platforms possible. Without further ado, let's take a look at the video.
Cape Town's layout provides a striking example of the clear socioeconomic divisions between South Africans. I'm standing in a township that reflects the living conditions of most black Cape Townians. Poor and under-resourced, without access to running water, sewage, or even electricity. Just next to it is a white suburb that's worlds apart. And there's no easier way to see this than with a drone.
Who else noticed the power line right behind her as she said the people here live without electricity? Let's take a look at her drone footage.
It's a barren, informal settlement made up mostly of shacks and government-built homes. Literally next to the township is a white suburb that's overflowing with greenery.
Alright, here is where it is starting to get really interesting, but it gets a lot more interesting later on in the video, so stay tuned for that. As you can see from her drone footage, that she stood in the worst part she could possibly find in that squatter camp. You can see the houses are all a lot better looking than the one she stood next to when she was filming herself talking, and you could also see that they all had power lines, which she said they did not have electricity. Take note, there is also a lot of really nice looking cars in that squatter camp, something that not even middle class Europeans in Europe can afford, and something you will definitely not see in white squatter camps in South Africa. Now, the suburb of Houtbaai, which is right next to this squatter camp, is definitely not a white suburb. Anyone who has a few $1,000,000 to spare can buy themselves a luxury mansion here. This was once one of the richest vacation suburbs in South Africa, where lots of people from overseas bought some vacation homes, and also people from Pretoria and Johannesburg, which is the more industrious and richer cities in South Africa. Note the fact that I said was and not is. We'll come to that later. I also think that it should be pointed out that she said that these homes were government built. Now, more than 1 million whites live in poverty in South Africa, according to the BBC, and the white population in South Africa is 4.5 million, and it should also be pointed out that the government have never built one house, not even one house, for any of these poor whites here in South Africa. So who is the government really discriminating against? The 25% of poor whites, or the poor blacks that moved to Cape Town recently?
So here's what life looks like for most white Cape Townians. Nice suburban homes with running water, protected by walls and alarm systems. Some even have signs specifically warning black Africans in their language of Xhosa of dogs inside.
Now that is a lie. The sign clearly says beware in English, gevaar in Afrikaans, and ingozi in Xhosa, clearly designed to be read and understood by people of all backgrounds and languages. The other lie, which this whole documentary is based on, is the fact that they use the 1% and compare it to a very poor neighborhood mostly inhabited by blacks, and then they pretend like this 1% is only whites. In fact, our current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is a multi-billionaire who would probably have a house in a place like Houtbaai. This is where the video is starting to get very interesting, so stay tuned for that.
While Africans are the vast majority in most of South Africa, in Cape Town, coloreds are the largest group. Africans are a close second. Whites are only 15%, followed by Asians and others. The segregation we see from above is the legacy of an apartheid system that was instituted by South Africa's National Party and lasted from 1948 to 1994.
Firstly, I have to point out that the numbers used here are quite old. Those are the 2016 numbers. In 2018, or where we are now, black people are already 44% of the Cape Town population, which makes them a majority. And projection says they will be an outright majority by the end of the year if the influx of black migration to Cape Town continues as it does today. Now, during apartheid, or in the beginning of apartheid rather, in 1948 the census said that black people made up less than 1% of the Cape Town population. So, what caused the black population to explode after apartheid, and what caused them to be so low during apartheid? As for during apartheid, Cape Town was very far from the original Bantu homelands of the Great Lakes area in Africa, which is the present-day Malawi, and also it was not nearly as rich as the cities of Johannesburg and Pretoria. So most of the influx of the Bantu people were to Pretoria and Johannesburg, as those were the economically booming areas of South Africa, and they moved there for jobs and better living conditions. So why is the population exploding after apartheid? Well, Cape Town was one of the least black cities during apartheid, and for some reason unknown to me, after the ANC government took over and everything basically were kind of destroyed all over the country, crime skyrocketed and living conditions decreased by a lot. Unemployment for black people went from around 10% to around 45%, broadly speaking. Cape Town was one of the few cities where the conditions did not decrease so badly for reasons unknown to me. And now all these people are moving to Cape Town because they see it as a place where they can have better living standards. Although this is not true, because Cape Town does not have the economy to support them or to give them jobs. And this is causing a lot of trouble in Cape Town at this moment. You'll see in the news a lot of trains being set to fire, arson to buildings, stuff like that, riots and so forth in Cape Town, because there is just no jobs or work for the people that migrate there. Now, this whole documentary was based on a township named Imizamu Yetu, which is, as you know, close to Houtbaai. This township only started to exist in the 21st century, but it only started to grow and explode in population in 2011. Now, I found out from the Cape Town real estate website that property prices went down by 30% in Houtbaai in 2011, because coincidentally crime also skyrocketed in that area. Now in 2018 you can buy houses in Houtbaai for less than the houses were being built for. So if any one of you are interested, there are some bargains for you right there. Now, this whole documentary by Al Jazeera is based on a very dangerous and untrue rhetoric also used by South African politicians to incite racial hatred.
When Jan van Riebeeck landed in the Western Cape, our problems began. It's a historic fact.
Now, the funny part about this is that then President Jacob Zuma is a Zulu.
Oh, and just one more point that a lot of Americans don't know. We're so used to, colonialism. No, the Boers, the ones who were there before the Zulus. They got there first. The Zulus came down like 100 years later. I mean, we are witnessing a straight-out genocide.
Sê vir hulle, Tannie Ann. Seriously, I hope that this has inspired you to look into the real history of South Africa. The Al Jazeera documentary continues to say this.
Under apartheid, Cape Town's more exclusive Atlantic coast beaches like this one used to prohibit blacks. Whites enjoyed their own beaches like these, while blacks and coloreds had their own beaches which looked like this.
Seriously, I can see no difference between the two beaches he showed here, except for the people on them. So, is Al Jazeera just so racist that they say that a beach full of white people is wonderful and exotic and a good place to go get vacation, and the beach full of black people is horrible? Well, rewind the video a bit and look for yourself, but I could literally see no difference between the beaches except for the people. Let's look at the last part of the Al Jazeera video.
The inequality here is so stark that Cape Town's Gini index, which economists use to measure inequality, is 63 out of 100. That's one of the highest in the world. So why has Cape Town failed to deliver a better life for all since the end of apartheid? Some blame Cape Town's governance. Cape Town rests within the province of the Western Cape, which is the only one of South Africa's 9 provinces not run by the governing African National Congress. That's the anti-apartheid party of Nelson Mandela. Instead, it's run by the Democratic Alliance, which grew out of white liberal establishment politics, but includes remnants of the old National Party and black middle-class support. The Democratic Alliance dismisses any claims that Cape Town remains racist, but it's hard to deny the structural segregation and discrimination that still exists, even if it is more subtle than it was under apartheid.
No. Can we first point out the complete insignificance of the Gini coefficient? The Gini coefficient between myself and the current President of the United States is very, very high. But what does that say? Other than that he is a lot richer than I am? Well, exactly nothing. Furthermore, Al Jazeera compared the richest 1%, which coincidentally has nothing to do with race, with a very poor neighborhood in Cape Town and made it all about race, even though anyone can tell you that it has nothing to do with race. It looks like they produced all this as propaganda to incite racial hatred in a country where white farmers are already being slaughtered for their skin color. And that, I think, is not acceptable for a news agency to do. My name is Willem Petse and I make videos like these on a weekly basis about the situation in South Africa. So please subscribe to my channel and click on that bell icon so that you can get notifications from me. Also follow me on Twitter, where you will receive news about South Africa as it happens.